Morning. Today is Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioner Sobroff, Decker, Bonner, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
You know, ordinarily, just say have a great and happy Thanksgiving to everyone here. But things are so confusing now, and I mean, here we are at Thanksgiving, and with what happened with the fires, and what happened in Thousand Oaks, and what happens nationally, and so many people have been displaced and damaged. I don't know what to say, but I do hope everybody takes some time to be thankful for what we all do have together. Let's proceed. We have no consent agenda items on item number 2A. Are there any commissioner comments on 2A or?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I do have a question for the audit group. With respect to the report, first of all, thank you again for your diligence. And I noted the improvements that have been made since the last audit, which is, of course, great news. But I did have a quick question on the sample size again, and not with respect to civilian, because I understand the number of civilians in the department has gone down, but the sworn force has largely remained the same since the last audit. But I noted that the sample size was smaller, and I wonder if that's because the number of sworn officers in the respective units had gone down, or whether there was some other reason for the sample size being smaller than the last audit. And I assume that was because the officers in those respective units that were being audited, that maybe the numbers have fluctuated since the last audit. But I just wonder if you can verify that for me.
First of all, good morning. Jeffrey Phillips, Commanding Officer of Audit Division, and with me I have Lieutenant Kelly Arnett, who is the officer in charge who oversaw the audit. Sometimes it could be because of the population that is reduced. That's really all I can surmise as to perhaps why that sample size is smaller.
That was what I was assuming, but I just wanted to verify that, and still note the great progress that has been made. Yeah. I do note also that the challenges seem to be when an officer changes assignments, and getting that date down with greater precision seems to be the broader issue facing the department. And I assume some of the technology that's being implemented will help advance that cause.
Yes, it's the department does its best. FOD, in particular, Fiscal Operations Division, does its best in keeping that communication going with all the commanding officers. It's a lot to keep track of, a lot of personnel. I do want to mention that Fiscal Operations Division did take the corrective action in contacting those RSCOs and following up with correcting that pay.
Okay, do we have any other commissioner comments on this? Any public comments?
We have none, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval of item 2A?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, 2B, do we have any comments or questions from commissioners on the sale and transfer?
Just had one question. There was the information about the treatment of the existing workforce.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There was information in the report about the treatment of the existing workforce, and there's a commitment to keep them all on payroll for, I believe, the first 90 days or something. I was just wondering, one, how many are there, and two, what do we know about any plans going forward?
Detective Jones could probably respond to that best, sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Detective Jones from Commission Investigation Division. The workforce at ATS is approximately 16 or 17 employees. regularly and probably equal number of part-time employees. And speaking with the owner, the new owner, he doesn't intend on eliminating the workforce because he still has to provide for 2 service areas now. That workforce is skilled and not readily available, so it's in his best interest to keep them. And I think that's why they voluntarily put that in there, is because that is their intention.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
Detective Jones, just to follow up, both of these OPSs were those that were previously approved by City Council for the city to enter into contracts with. Is that right?
Both of them underwent extensive background investigation during the original RFP process.
So now he has 2 and the other guy doesn't have any. Right?
Correct.
Okay, but they were both approved.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, do we have any public comments on 2B?
We have one. We have Mr. Herman.
Mr. Herman? This is 2B on the towing. Morning.
Gobble, gobble. Gobble, gobble. So we're looking at another garage service. But we already know what these services are all about. Unfair treatment, unfair payments. It's just a form of retaliation. How do I know that? Because the city of Los Angeles retaliates. The city of Los Angeles retaliates. It's a proven fact. How they transfer monies, how they embezzle monies, how they favor one business over another, which I find offensive. But no one seems to want to investigate that, right, Detective Jones? We keep the same business going the way we kept Jose Huizar going. Routine. Until the FBI comes in and
Mr. President, the
investigates.
speaker's
That
off
has
topic.
nothing
This is
to do
about
with
transfer and OPG.
Okay, so we're done with that one. Thank you, sir.
We have no other cards on this item.
Do we have a motion for approval of item 2B? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 2C is the grant application. Any questions? Any public comments?
We have Mr. Herman.
Mr. Herman? And 2D, do we have any,
We have Mr. Herman also.
okay, do we have any commission questions on 2D? So should we do this one? Well, we'll do 2C by itself. Okay?
The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. We've heard in the past year, crimes against children included the Los Angeles Police Department because we failed to protect children. Crimes against children. And so now that we, the people, are here to delegate the authority in a positive manner to inform you that the rights of our children's rights were violated. You allowed grown men and women to take our children unsupervised and target our children under sex crimes, which, for the record, was called Cadet Program. Do we still have supervision? Is there supervision to protect our children? Again, the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. I am the Brown Act. I am citing from the Brown Act. Even Mr. T-Fank knows that the spearmint rhino brings crimes against
Mr. President,
children.
the speaker's off topic again.
Last warning.
Well, isn't it a fact that when you go to strip clubs,
He's off topic
children
again, sir.
are
Okay, let's go to number D.
involved in crimes?
Your time's up.
What do you mean? I got 21 seconds,
You
sir.
have no time left, sir.
So
and
you,
that's your last
now you're
warning.
now
I'm
you're
gonna ask
behaving
you-
in retaliation like the city, not allowing me under the
Oh,
Brown
you're
Act to
disrupting
use
the
the time.
meeting.
This is not
This is-
disruption. I have the floor.
Okay.
For my full
No, you
time.
don't have the
I
floor,
have the
and you
floor,
have to leave the-
Chairman.
You have to leave the meeting.
So you want to violate my civil rights?
No, I'm asking you to leave the meeting.
For what purpose, sir? I got
Disruption.
Time's up.
Thank you. You can leave the meeting.
We have no other comment card on this item.
We have a motion for approval of 2C. All in favor? Aye. Mr. Herman, you have to leave the meeting. For what purpose, sir? I don't have to respond to you anymore. Mr. Herman, you need to leave the meeting.
Okay, I'm leaving, you terrorist Jew. I'm leaving. It's not my fault that I'm not a homosexual. It's not my fault. But I'm leaving.
Okay, let's go to 2D.
A terrorist Jew separates me from housing because
Let's go. I don't want to listen to him. We have anything on 2D?
investigates you for a crime.
We only have Mr. Herman, sir.
Pardon me? Okay.
No other cards.
Dale, did you have a question?
You took money from the public, Soboroff. You should be under an FBI investigation with Jose Huizar. That's why you retaliated. That's why you retaliated. But I'm leaving.
Yeah, my questions were about, there's a number of references with regard, relating to the OTS non-discrimination requirements and other various requirements from other agencies. The question just is, how are those requirements, enforced and monitored?
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I'm Phil Tingerides, and I'm the Commanding Officer at Transit Bureau. And for the specific questions, I'd like Lieutenant Dave Ferry, who is very knowledgeable about that. He can answer that.
Okay, Lieutenant.
Hi, Commissioner. Your question was how was the grant enforced? The measures of the grant enforced?
No, well, there's a provision regarding non-discrimination, and there's another reference to the sub-recipient agencies complying with the laws against profiling. And the question really is, what is the approach to enforcing and monitoring those issues relative to these types of grants?
Beyond the all of the policies and practices of the Los Angeles Police Department that we already have in place, everything in this grant is audited by a agency which is employed by the City of Los Angeles, and the Office of Traffic Safety also will do audits and regulations to make sure that every measure of effectiveness and piece of this grant is being properly prosecuted.
Do we have any, and whether this is today or we can come back and talk a little bit more, but it'd be helpful to understand really, and by the way, in interest of full disclosure, for several years I oversaw the Office of Traffic Safety, and so I've seen a lot of these grants come forward, and this strikes me as relatively boilerplate, language that you see in every grant application, and there's usually a broad prophylactic statement that there is no discrimination or profiling and so on and so forth. But typically that's all you see. So you never really get to the question of how does the agency actually look at their administration of the grant to really ensure that there isn't. So that's really the question is beyond a broad commitment not to profile, what it'd be helpful to understand how we go about ensuring that we're not profiling.
Commissioner, I think one of the keys for this grant is that the vast majority of the enforcement involved in this is going to be off of observations of actions that probably the officers are not even going to know the race of who they're stopping when it comes to a DUI, and they see impaired driving and the actions that would cause an officer to believe somebody's impaired driving. Same thing with the speeding. Most of the time, an officer's not even going to know who they're stopping at the time. I think the department has put a tremendous amount of emphasis on the bias policing, also with FDRs, and ensuring that we're able to keep track of who's being stopped and the actions that were taken at the time. So I think the commitment from the department, and also the type of enforcement that this is generally not going to be the kind that you're going to see racial profiling, because it's more off of actions than just stopping a car.
And mind you, I don't have any reason to believe otherwise as we sit here. And as you know, one of my assignments or subcommittee assignments as a commissioner is going to be to work with your division in overseeing not just this grant, but this general set of issues. So I'll look forward to talking with you a little bit further in detail just about some of the points you just made.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other questions? Do we have any public comments?
We have none, sir.
Okay, we have motion for approval of item number 2D, please.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, let's go to report of the chief. Chief Green, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Deputy Chief Bob Green, Chief of Staff, sitting in for the Chief of Police.
Thank you, guys. Happy holiday.
So the Chief wanted me to convey his gratitude to the men and women of the organization, their response to the fires last week. A lot of our individuals involved in evacuations and perimeter control on the evacuated areas. Tremendous work with the fire department. With that, I'll go into the 3 officer-involved shootings that we've had since the last open commission meeting. First being Sunday, November 11th, 2018, about 10:30 at night. 2 Metropolitan Division officers were traveling south on Halldale Avenue in the area of the Normandale Recreation Center. They heard the sound of possible gunfire, and they drove into the apron of the driveway. The officers then observed 2 male individuals walk from the gymnasium building in their direction. At least one of those individuals immediately fired several rounds at the officers as they were still seated inside the police vehicle. The vehicle was struck. Both officers exited the car and returned fire, striking one individual who was taken into custody without incident, and his weapon was recovered at the scene. The second individual fled the area. The origin of the gunshots was determined to be an ADW shooting that occurred on the opposite side of the gymnasium building, where the 2 individuals allegedly approached a male and female victim, fired several rounds in their direction. The female was struck in the lower leg and transported to the hospital. Second individual was taken into custody later, and both have been booked for attempt murder. Next shooting was on the 2 next officer-involved shootings were both on November 18th. The first about 5:30 in the morning in the southeast area. Officers responded to a radio call of ADW shots fired at 9543 Defiance Avenue. The comments of the radio call indicated a female had reportedly been shot inside the location, and then the telephone line was disconnected. Upon the officers' arrival, they observed a male individual identified as Derek Wilson walk out onto the sidewalk area of 9543 Defiance. He then turned back toward the front of the same house. Officers heard gunshots. However, they did not see where Wilson was standing at the time of the gunshots. They requested help. Responding officers also observed muzzle flashes. They returned fire, believing the suspect was shooting at them. Very shortly after, they were met by victims and witnesses who advised them that they had been inside the location during the shooting and managed to escape. They provided additional information. The officers, at which point they deployed rescue teams. The officers rescued 2 female victims from the residence, also identified a deceased male inside. Wilson was also found inside the residence with a gunshot wound to the head. He was transported and placed on life support. He was later taken off life support. An additional male victim of gunshot wounds was also rescued from location, transported to the hospital by RA, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. That same day, at approximately 3:40 in the afternoon, uniformed Hollywood patrol officers were on patrol. They observed a Range Rover with paper plates. The driver of the Range Rover, later identified as Harut Tarusian, stopped his vehicle, but then he fled at a high rate of speed. The officers initiated a vehicle pursuit. The pursuit entered the southbound Hollywood freeway. Tarusian was confronted with heavy volume of traffic, and he elected to exit the Range Rover onto the freeway in the area of Melrose Avenue. Tarusian was observed in possession of a handgun. An officer-involved shooting occurred. He fled across the freeways. The passenger, later identified as Frederick Orochio, remained in the vehicle, was taken into custody without incident. Responding Metropolitan Division K-9 personnel responded, located and took Tarusian into custody following a prowler call to location. Tarusian sustained a gunshot graze wound to the top of his head and torso. He was transported to USC and later released. A semi-automatic handgun was located and recovered adjacent to the northbound freeway entrance where Tarusian was last seen fleeing. He was booked for assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer and also booked for unrelated prior robberies. That's it for the officer-involved shootings.
That's the one that shut the freeway down for so long?
Yes, sir, that was it for 6 hours. They ended up with a crime scene on the northbound Hollywood Freeway.
Okay.
So crime for the week. Still on homicides, we're in good shape. We're minus 7.8. We're 226 versus 245 year to date for last year. For total violent crime, we're down 3.3%. Overall, part 1 crime, we're down 2.7%. Victim shot, we're still down 2.9% year to date. Gang homicides are down 19.6%. Total gang crime down 9.3%. Officer-involved shootings, including these 3, were at 30 opposed to 39 for a 23% decrease. 11 of those have been fatal, opposed to 14 last year. And officers recovered a total of 5,506 guns year to date. Traffic collisions. Overall traffic collisions were down 6.7% for fatal traffic collisions. And for hit and run collisions, we're down 6.4%, 44 as opposed to 47. Motor vehicle versus pedestrian, we're down 8.8%. And bicycle involved TCs is where we're still struggling. We have 16 this year versus 14 last year for a 14.3% increase. And then I'll move to personnel numbers. The department currently stands at 10,003 sworn, 2,981 civilian with 430 civilian vacancies. End of my report.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of the Chief? Any public comments?
We have 2 cards. We have Mr. Novick and Adam Smith.
Mr. Novick.
I'm not sure if I missed something. You have acting chief of police. Did something happen to the chief of police? I came in late.
I was with him last night. He's taking a day off today.
Okay. I wasn't sure. It usually just identifies the whoever the deputy chief is. So.
Got it.
So I'm sorry, it isn't because, we've been talking about the reduction in shootings, and here you have 3 shootings in a week, so I think that's problematic. You're climbing up towards last year's total with, number of weeks to go in the year. I'm curious, I know that there's been there was a long controversy in the L.A. Sheriff's Department where the sheriff was trying to turn over to prosecutors in L.A. County a list of several hundred problem officers whose testimony might be questionable. I'm wondering if the Los Angeles Police Department has attempted any similar inventory or made any effort to turn over to prosecutors a similar list of officers whose testimony might be in question. And I'm also wondering what the result of several state laws that mandated racial inventories of people stopped and encountered by the police, whether that report has been compiled and made public.
Next speaker, please.
Adam Smith, please.
Mr. Smith.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, Mr. Smith.
So it's clear that the LAPD values its intended shootings, leading the country every year in the number of killings by the department. But speaking specifically about the shooting that happened at the house, where you said that the officers saw a muzzle shooting or whatever you called it. Muzzle flashes and assumed that they were being shot at and returned fire. Speaking, I know that I have no faith in the commission to actually act on the behalf of the community, but I'm speaking directly to Mr. Bonner and Ms. Decker. Is there anything being done, over the summer? Elizabeth Tollison, an unhoused person, was shot and killed by the LAPD, herself apparently being threatened outside of a shelter in Van Nuys, and ended up shooting her. And then, of course, the killing of Melita Corrado. The incident obviously made national news, not so much national news that the LAPD bullets are the ones that killed the store manager, Melita Corrado, but and not knowing the facts of what the deputy chief of staff was talking about at that house. But is there any like process being done to mitigate, the unintended killings that the LAPD keeps racking up? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. President, we do have a late card from Mr. Spindler.
No, we'll just go right into public comment.
Okay. We have 8 public comment cards.
Okay. Let's let Spindler go first.
Okay.
Spindler, do you have a public comment card in?
Yes,
too?
he does, sir.
Okay, so go ahead. This is public comment, Mr. Spindler.
Man, you Hebrews, you all alike. God damn. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Mr. Puppet. He's a racist and he won't take your police commission report. All right. Wow. I guess you really aged on the job, Ma. You look a lot older than I last saw you. Yeah. You lost a lot of hair. And look who we got here, ladies and gentlemen. A legend. That's right. Eileen Decker. Eileen Decker. You know who she is? No. Eileen Decker is the one who used to be the United States Attorney for the Central District of California, appointed by Barack Obama. And you know what she used to do? She used to cover up all of the crimes at City Hall, including our good friend Jose Weezer. I knew her real well, like Garcetti. And then, January 2017, President Trump won. The first thing he did was kick her ass and fire her immediately out of that position because he knew, and everybody in her office knew, and the FBI local office knew, that she was covering up everything for City Hall. All those investigations quashed. All those thousands of documents destroyed and put back in the burner as insufficient evidence of corruption and unlikely to proceed before a grand jury. One after another sealed. So let's give her a hand, everybody. Thanks to her, we got all those developments out there is because Eileen Decker, because without her, they wouldn't have built nothing with all that money. Let's give her a hand, everybody. Yeah. So now she's here in the police commission next to that other fool looking over there, the one with Jacob, the gay son. And they're going to have a good time now as the FBI brought in a real heavy hitter from the West Coast, fool. They're going to shut your ass down. So
Next.
Next speaker, Teresa Akins, followed by Adam Smith.
Akins, morning.
Hi. I am Terry Akins, and my family immigrated with Lou Wasserman, who was Ronald Reagan's agent. Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, and my stupid sister Eve, my rotten ex-husband, surrounded me up in Altadena, and they started organized gang stalking in the cities of La Cañada, La Crescenta, Montrose, Glendale. They are still bragging about how they made me nothing. And they sent people up in the DA's office, Molly Munger and Warren Buffett, then went to the LA County Board of Supervisors. They nailed me, and again, are still bragging about how I am wanted by the County of LA. All law enforcement has been involved, and I really don't have anything to do with politics, but they are killing me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Smith, followed by Gina Viola and Jacqueline Richardson.
Good morning. Revisiting last week, I just want to, again point out the sham of this commission. The people from the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition put pressure on enough to for you all to request an audit on these predictive policing programs. And I think that it was very irresponsible to move that proposed budget and send it to Garcetti's office without those audits being done. And I'm glad that the Deputy Chief of Staff is here today because before Soboroff rudely interrupted last week's meeting and closed it down, Sergeant Sapp from your office confirmed with me that these planters that are getting installed in Venice and all over the city have all been being put in unpermitted. And to displace unhoused folks. He suggested if I call 311 and put in a request that they should be removed. I've done that, and this morning, I got a confirmation that today some planters are going to be removed by the city. I don't actually expect that to happen, so I'm wondering, and I'll talk to you after, but I'm wondering what the follow-up is when the city doesn't respond to these requests.
Next speaker, please. Who's up?
Gina Viola, followed by Jacqueline Richardson.
Morning.
Morning. So I want to talk about these police commission meetings, and they really need to be held away from the LAPD headquarters, where they're accessible to all members of the community, specifically those most impacted by policing. You need to hold all police commission meetings in the evening, not just once or twice a year for these publicity stunts. 4 times a year. 9:30 on a weekday, when the vast majority of folks working, attending school, or unavailable. I've worked it into my own schedule to carve out Tuesday mornings to come here. That is not easy. It is not an easy commitment that I have made in order to do it, to come here and speak for those who cannot. Also, people attending these meetings should feel welcome, not be subjected to excessive, intrusive security screening and intimidated by the number of armed police surrounding us inside the meeting. It's a difficult situation, especially for people who've been impacted by police violence. All members of the public should be treated with respect, especially family members and others from communities most impacted by police. And that is not what happens in this room. It's just not. The Commission must develop a procedure to receive and promptly and publicly answer questions asked or submitted by community members. It has been refreshing that this new police chief does respond when we have points made here in the meeting, and I'd like to see that as being part of the process of a meaningful commission that overviews these things. So that's my request today.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Richardson, followed by Mr. Novick and John Avalos.
Morning.
Good morning. This is about Russia. Russian watchmen. City Hall may know a little bit about them. The Russian watchmen watch everything. They watch the police. They watch schools. They watch anything and everything you can think of. They report to Russia. And anything you can think of, they report that and watch it. The City Hall may know a little bit about it. Russian soldiers is the next problem. About 2005 through 2007, there were some black Russian soldiers in downtown Los Angeles. They lived here. I didn't know they were Russian soldiers at first. They left. When they left, they were real nice people. When they left, they were on Main Street going north. They were dressed in their Russian soldier uniforms. I think they were green. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I thought they were going to work at Pep Boys, about 17 of them, between the ages of about 17 to 45. Most of them were young, but the oldest one was about 45 years old. A little bit later, about a year later or so, downtown Los Angeles, I was walking around in those real tall buildings down there. They're about 5 to 7 white men working on some of the buildings. And he said, "Aren't you going to tell on us? We're Russian soldiers." I said, "Well, he must be kidding. He must think I'm crazy to report that." But somebody told me those white people don't tell lies that much. So he said he was a Russian soldier, but I didn't believe him. that was all I saw. The black Russian soldiers were real nice young men, very, very nice, and they didn't cause any problem, just walking around. Some of them had jobs and went to work, but when they left, they looked like they were working for Pep Boys, about 17 of them. They were going north on Main Street like they were going to catch the bus. The white ones were down working on some buildings where all the big, tall skyscrapers are downtown Los Angeles. And they were working, they had tools, and they were working on the buildings. And he said, "Aren't you going to tell on us? We're Russian soldiers." He said, "It's so nasty." I didn't believe him.
Mr. Novick.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Gina Viola said. These meetings should be taking place in the evenings in the community every week, not occasionally. I'd like to ask the police commissioner the same question I asked the chief. Are you doing any kind of inventory of problem officers and making that available to prosecutors in Los Angeles? I note that the family of Omar Gonzalez released video of his murder. That would involve the same officer who was just in a civil rights trial in federal court and exonerated. I think that you have to put in place policies that make it clear that shooting unarmed 14-year-olds is a violation of the policy and out of policy, and otherwise the blood of the people who are being killed by LAPD are on your hands. I think that the board is remiss in general in its oversight responsibilities and in its adoption of policies that will prevent LAPD from being the most murderous police department in the country year after year. We've talked about the role the first responders play in dealing with the fires, but City of Los Angeles and the County of Los Angeles are ground zero on the question of police murders in this country. The number of murders that take place in this city and in this county are off the charts compared to any other jurisdictions in the United States. And you have the responsibility of crafting policies that will deal with that, or otherwise you should resign your positions and get somebody in there who can.
Next speaker.
John Avalos, followed by Hamid Khan and Jeffrey Vilshad.
Hi, everybody. John Avalos. I live in Highland Park, and I teach at UC Riverside. Yeah, ever since I started coming here when Waukesha Wilson died in jail, the Black Lives Matter people that come up here, they always say that this department is the most murderous department in the nation. They constantly repeat that. And you all never say, no, that's not true. So does that mean, do you agree? Does that mean that you agree that this is the most murderous police department in the country? If you don't agree, why don't you correct us? Because I've tried to research it. At first, the Google would say, yeah, they would put Los Angeles. But lately, I go to Google, it's no longer, Los Angeles doesn't show up in there. So what's up with that? Bakersfield seems to be number one. Weird. So, because some of the LA city workers, many have usually sit over there on that side, and police workers, they're online with me telling me, oh no, you got your facts wrong. You're an idiot. You're just saying that without the proper facts. Right? Because I'm repeating that with all my 4,000 friends about this department, that it's the most murderous. And so these city workers are in there trying to put me down because my facts are not right. And so I'm still trying to figure this out. Is it? It is, isn't it? Yeah. It still is. I mean, in general, it still is, isn't it? I mean, help me. 7, 6, 5. Anyway, there's so much to talk about, but I'll be back, I guess. Please hold the meetings at another place.
Hamid Khan, followed by Jeffrey Vilshad.
So I'm going to speak to Otis and Adeline. Hey, guys. Always a pleasure to have you guys here. But this is also, at this very young age, this is a civic lesson that you're getting, which you missed last Tuesday at the general meeting. And what we saw was this very shameless performance, absolutely a pathetic and a shameless performance. And let me name them. Dale Bonner, remember this name as you're growing up. Eileen Decker, Steve Soboroff. Well, Shane Goldsmith is never there when these kind of decisions are being made, what she's a part of, like drones and all. And what they did was that they rubber stamped almost $2 billion for this department, right, which is the most murderous department, or one of the most murderous departments. Not that Dale Bonner himself acknowledged that you expect us to read 706 pages in 3 days, and then to say he doesn't want to get into the middle of it. So this is the function of a civilian oversight body. This is the function of a civilian oversight body. And we have Shane Goldsmith, who was a part, who passed a motion, wrote the motion, which was seconded by Cynthia McLean Hill, and the disrespect they showed to the former commissioner, who raised a lot of concerns about Chronic Offenders Bulletin, who raised a lot of concern about the laser program in the first ever public hearing that we held at City Hall on July 24th. What do Dale Bonner and Eileen Decker and Steve Soboroff say? Forget about Cynthia McLean Hill. She's history. Let's go ahead and rubber stamp it. Let's not wait to see that what the human impact is, because it's clearly stated Shane Goldsmith had that this audit needs to look at the disparate impact of the programs on communities of color. Okay, let's grant them this. But I think one thing I want to point out is that let's not get caught up in that, because what is happening is that more than an audit, this is becoming a cover-up. This man, Mark Smith, says...
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Jeffrey Velshad.
Mr. Khan, next speaker, please. Time's up. Mr. Khan, time is up. Mr. Khan, please yield the mic. Your time is up. Mr. Khan, this is it's your last warning. Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Khan can leave the meeting now. We escort Mr. Khan out of the meeting. He's been disruptive to the meeting. I've warned him. I've said please, and so he can leave the meeting. Mr. Khan, happy Thanksgiving, sir. You can leave the meeting. Yep. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, so I thought I would give a few thoughts regarding the relationship. In Occupy Los Angeles, when someone would come back to the powers that be, they would call that a report back. So I'll kind of refer to this as like a report back, somewhat satirically, whatever. So I'd like to give like a little report back regarding the relationship with this organization as the police in Los Angeles, LAPD, and the Persian community. I don't think there's any other Persians here, but I'll take it upon myself to give that report since my dad is Persian. My uncle was I think the first Persian elected to office in the United States in Beverly Hills as the mayor. So, yeah, thank you.
Guy.
So that's like a qualification, perhaps. So regarding the Persian community, I just thought I would say that I think there's a little bit of room for improvement as far as your image, as I guess is like the point of view you guys seem to take. Your image as far as winning the hearts and minds, as the saying goes. Persians are very cynical people, so if there's room for doubt regarding integrity or other things like that, they tend to assume corruption. I'm not saying what my own personal opinion is, but I'm just, again, reporting back, I guess you could say. The perception is that there is a lot of room for doubt, and that creates the opinion in the community that in the absence of other information, corruption is the operating principle. So I just thought I would give you that information, and if you'd like to, use your own energies to improve the situation, you can. Thank you.
There are no other cards on item number 4. We're now on item number 5, closed session. We have 3 cards on 5A1, 1 card on 5A2, and 1 on 5A3.
Start with 5A1, please.
5A1, we have Gina Viola, Mr. Novick, and Mr. Spindler.
So 3 officer-involved shootings in 12 days last December. The first thing I want to say is officer-involved shooting, that terminology needs to change. The public does not understand what that means. It sounds like an officer was shot when people read that. It needs to say officer shoots civilian. You will have more people here, more people asking questions. Police violence was just designated a public health issue by the American Public Health Association. They're going to be writing that up. In 2017, police shot and killed more than 1,000 people in the United States, and Los Angeles led the way in that. It is epidemic. Like other violence, police violence is preventable. You have the opportunity to make it preventable by holding officers accountable. We hear you in these meetings week after week, rubber stamp everything that's on this agenda. I have sat on boards myself. So I understand how it happens. I do. But these officer-involved shootings are something different. Like, this is an opportunity for you to change the way things are done. You have to start holding these officers accountable. You have to. Rubber stamping officer-involved shootings over and over again just leads to more and more of it. You couple that with predictive policing. You send police officers out into these communities, telling them to be frightened, telling them they are at risk. They shoot people in a locker room naked with no weapons. It's enormous. What you're doing today, you're reviewing 3 of these that happened in 12 days last year, less than a year ago. And this is happening every single month in this city. Black, brown, and poor being shot unarmed by police.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Do something about it.
Mr. Novick.
This is 5A1, Mr. Novick.
Yeah, on 5A1, it's one of 3 shootings that took place in a very short period of time. About a year ago, last December, you had 3 shootings this week that were just reported by the acting chief of police here. This one involved 3 officers. I think that it's mandatory that you do more than act on each individual case. I don't know how to, I keep repeating this week after week. You have more than the responsibility of looking at an individual situation that 3 officers were involved in shooting D. Seymour. I think that in addition to not calling them officer-involved shootings, you should also specify in each one of these whether there was a fatality or not, so the public can be aware of it. I think that you have to look at the policies that allow these to take place. I think you have to develop an inventory of officers involved in these shootings. If officers involved in more than one, we need to know that. I think that you need to look at the pattern and practice, not just the policies, but if you have policies that are honored in the breach week after week, month after month, year after year, then something is wrong and it's your responsibility to deal with it. So I think that in this particular case, you should extract from the individual officers involved, the 3 police officer 3s. In this case, you should begin to extract policies and procedures that will change the way the department functions. And if you can't do that, you're derelict in your duty. You have to find somebody else who will do that. Dale Bonner was a staff member on the Christopher Commission. Christopher Commission was totally inadequate to the task that they faced at that time after the beating of Rodney King. They failed to come up with the kinds of changes in the policing. They came up only with a proposal to make the police chief a term-limited position approved by the city council on the mayor's nomination. That's not sufficient.
Mr. Spindler.
So after this, you can go over and see the Honorable Jose Huiza is back to work hard, and good job. Now, what we got here was a little mental problem that happened in the department. They were under orders to clean up the streets, and they got a little too aggressive. So they just go ahead, they just start cleaning out their guns and all them nasty heavy bullets, you see. So they emptied them into D.C. Mall. We don't know what his first name is. We don't even know what council district this happened is. And that's real good because Mr. Bonner don't give a shit about that. He's just interested in exonerating the officer. Like, oh, you black folks in suits. That's right. You just gonna go ahead. I'm black, but I'm gonna vote for the murdering cop. Then we get to the ladies on the commission. Well, they need the men with the big guns, so they're gonna say yes, innocent to the 3 police officers. Then we get to the bald-headed fool with the gay son, and of course he's going to ratify and approve that this is within department policy, because it's within department policy to shoot people. It's within department policy to clip empty your gun, and if you fire 1 bullet, it ain't going to matter if you empty the clip on the remaining 14 out of that Beretta. So you might as well just empty them all into the same victim, because they ain't going to make no goddamn difference, right? So you just going to go back there. And actually, I know a little secret, y'all, and this is real cool. Did you know that when they break into closed session, they don't have a quorum a lot of times? They just go right out to lunch. Did you know that? Yeah. See, I caught Cynthia a couple of times and Steve just running out of there with a quorum of 3, going and claiming to have a closed session. There's no quorum when you have less than 3. So you just go ahead. You just keep breaking the law. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Just keep doing like Jose Huiza. He's right back. Everything is normal. Nobody gonna go down.
We have Mr. Novick on 5A2 and Mr. Novick on 5A3.
Okay. This is on 5A2, please.
Yeah, 5A2 is an officer-involved shooting. It's incident number 82 in 2017. You had at least 83 incidents because the next one was on the 31st. So again, you have a pattern, you have a practice, you have something that requires consideration beyond the facts of the individual case to extract from those cases. In this case, you had 2 sergeants and 7 other officers involved in shooting Mr. Sandoval. So Mr. Sandoval, I assume it's Mr. That's a Hispanic surname. I think that there's been, a lot of requirements that the department monitor the number of stops and the racial identity of people who are stopped. And I think that the shootings and killings that take place in this city are the tip of an iceberg of racial profiling, racially stereotyping, now done in the form of data, doesn't justify it. So here you have 1, 2, 7, 8, 9 officers. You had 3 other officers. 7 officers and 2 sergeants, 3 other officers in the first incident. That's 10 officers and 2 sergeants involved in the first 2 shootings that took place in that last week or so of December. It seems to me that there's a problem there. It seems to me that that's, if you multiply that by 50 weeks a year, you're talking about an enormous number of officers in Los Angeles who've been involved in shootings, unless it's some of the same officers doing it again and again. So we need to know that. We need to know why that's happening at that level, at that intensity, and something has to be done about it. You're the people with the responsibility to do something about it, not just to rubber stamp this individual shooting and let these officers off again as you do week after week, month after month, and year after year. So number 3, officer-involved shooting. It's incident number 83 in 2017. So 83 incidents that rise to the level of requiring the LA Police Commission to look into what happened and determine whether the discipline within the department is correct. And what have you done? You have another sergeant and 2 more police officers involved in the shooting of R. Jimenez. Again, I think that, any respect for the opinions and conditions of the people of this city would require you to examine whether there's something going on here. So, it's not just this particular sergeant and these two particular officers, not just this particular victim. It's a question of, and when Michael Zinzin was alive, he brought lawsuits based on the question of a pattern and practice. And the pattern and practice, whatever the police department may claim, is that the LAPD kills a lot of people, and it kills a lot of black and brown people. And it does so because it's enforcing a system of economic exploitation, racial discrimination, privatization of public spaces that results in the targeting of black and brown people in the city. You're enforcing a system of white supremacy, and in doing so, you're taking people's lives. And it's your responsibility, and a lot of you are quite knowledgeable on this question. If you've been a prosecutor, you've been on the staff on the Christopher Commission, you deal with the Liberty Hill Foundation, you know that this is a systemic problem. It's not just the individual officers. It's not their responsibility alone. It's the political leadership of the city, and you represent that. You are appointed by that. It's your job to deal with this problem. It's a racial problem, and until you face that reality, you're going to just rubber stamp more and more killings.
There are no other comment cards on item number 5. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A1, 2, and 3 in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 5A3 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion for to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank
Let
you.
somebody stole our gavel, which I think is a misdemeanor.
I'm Angelina.
I'm Mike. And I'm Councilmember Curran Price, and we're proud to represent Los Angeles in the new night.
You're watching LA City View 35.
Your city, your channel.